At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way. Offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey y'all, my name is Abigail Franks, and I'm joined by the fabulous Mareshah Malcolm. As it has been touched on throughout the entire podcast since season 1, honestly, consistently working to make a world a better place means it's our job to make sure that we take care of ourselves in order to keep showing up and not get burnt out. It is also our job to deal with personal triggers that inevitably come up if you are someone who wants to continue engaging in transformative work. In other words, how do we wounded healers take care of ourselves in order to take care of others?
Today, we are bringing in 3 Southern healers, artists, and climate justice warriors to have an honest conversation about what it means to heal ourselves and heal the planet. As one of the speakers says today, personal healing and planetary healing are 2 sides of the same coin. Climate justice, y'all, it's real, it's here, and it's about time we highlight folks like Bevelyn Ukah, Jodie Lasseter, and Connie Leeper. All right, let's get started with the show.
This is Climate Justice, Y'all, a podcast dedicated to lifting up and centering the climate and environmental justice movement in the South. Despite the South being the most biodiverse, diverse, and one of the largest economic engines in the world, we are underfunded and often barred from the decision-making table. Because of that, we decided to pull up a chair and amplify the stories of communities in the South that are hit the hardest by the climate crisis.
We're using good old-fashioned storytelling to shine a spotlight on these Southern leaders from all walks of life, putting in their blood, sweat, and tears to transform the region. The usage of y'all in the title is on purpose. We are honoring our Southern heritage of creativity, resilience, and ingenuity. Climate justice, y'all. It's real, it's here, and it's about time y'all hear what we have to say.
There we go. Perfect. Good morning, y'all. I am so pumped for this episode. Listeners did not hear just the amazing grounding that Ms. Connie Leeper gave us before this episode. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to be talking about healing yourself to heal the planet, or healing yourself and healing the planet, with 3 amazing workers who have been doing amazing work in the South for years now. So first, if y'all could introduce yourselves and the organizations you work with and where y'all are calling in from, that would be awesome.
Yes, I'll go first. My name is Bevelyn Afor Ukah, and I'm calling in from Greensboro, North Carolina. It's right down the street from my mother's homeland. And I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So I always like to tell people, flip that narrative and let people know I'm a proud Southerner. And I love the great state of North Carolina for the grassroots movement work that happens here and the beautiful people that are here. And I work for the Center for Environmental Farming Systems. I'm the director of the Committee on Racial Equity. And what brought me into the Center for Environmental Farming Systems was following youth work and doing adult allyship work, which is one of the reasons why I have loved working with the NC Climate Justice Collective for the past now 6 or 7 years. I followed the youth all the way into realizing the importance of doing food justice work and food systems work connected to climate justice work. And so NC Climate Justice opened their arms up to a lot of our youth organizers across the state, and who are doing a lot of advocacy work through storytelling and the arts. And from there, I joined the NC Climate Justice Collective leadership team and have continued to evolve in community with NC Climate Justice as I continue to do food justice work. I'm also an artist, a visual artist, and a lot of that work is framed in these ideals of storytelling. And so I hope to talk about storytelling a bunch today as we connect to our healing work. There's so many more things that I could probably say. I also am the founder of AFI Oak Consulting and do a lot of equity and healing work through the arts in that space. But without further ado, I will pass it to Jodie.
Thanks, Bevelyn. Hey, everybody. Jodie Lasseter, she, her pronouns. I am the co-founder and co-director of the NC Climate Justice Collective that you were just hearing a little bit about from Bevelyn. I'm currently based in Durham, the land of the Eno, Tuscarora, and Occaneechi peoples, and originally grew up in the mountains of Western North Carolina in and around Asheville. So I'm really happy that I can continue to be in and work in my home state. We do work statewide through the Climate Justice Collective, and I'm sure we're going to be talking a lot more about all kinds of things related to that. But, certainly inner resilience and healing justice is at the core of what we do. And I'm so thrilled to be a part of this conversation today. So I'm going to pass it to you now, Ms. Connie.
Hey, everybody. I am Connie Leeper. I also use she, her pronouns. I am calling in from the great state of North Carolina in the city of Durham. And in terms of land acknowledgements, the same ones that Jodie said. So I wear a number of hats, and I want to end with the Climate Justice Collective, but I want to start with a little bit more about who I am as a proud Southerner, as a woman who, at my age, I am now considered a movement elder. And that's a distinction that I really want to name because it's going to be real important to my connections to the subject, which is about healing ourselves and healing the planet. So I am a percussionist, a gourd artist, and do my work in a lot of different ways, both from a sacred and a secular perspective around healing. And my work with the movement has been long-term since 1990, coming up through a lot of amazing organizations that have me here where I am today, both with North Carolina Warren, NC Warren, where I am the Senior Climate Justice Director. NC Warren is a statewide organization working for a more just and quicker transition to a renewable energy economy away from our extractive economies. And we're a watchdog to a major North Carolina utility, Duke Energy, trying to move them away from their dig, burn, build a fossil fuel model to one of a more regenerative one. As far as the North Carolina Climate Justice Collective, this is where I bring my head, my hand, and my heart, all of me, in a space that I helped to co-found and am now, co-directing. And the work that we're doing to really bridge the generational gaps in terms of being intergenerational, the multiracial gap, while also being BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color led, women and queer-centered, non-binary, all of the wonderful labels that we have to endure. I think that we, try to be as inclusive, as possible, but also how to model a lot of healing, including tools that have us turning toward each other versus away from each other. So I'll stop there and pass it back to Mareshah or Abigail.
Yeah, Mareshah, you jump in, but first I want to echo the tools that turn us toward each other, except against each other. I am bringing your head, your hands, and your heart to a space.
Right, that touched me for real. I felt that was a word. You ladies get down. You ladies get down and dirty in the South. That is amazing, and I love hearing inspirational stories like y'all's. That just moves me. So this episode is titled "Heal Yourself to Heal the Planet." What exactly does that mean to you, and how do you relate? What's your experience?
I guess I'll go first. I wanted to echo what you all brought up when we were in preparation about this idea of the wounded healer. And I just really appreciate you all bringing in this very sacred framework and understanding how we all come through the challenges that we've had in life. To, in some ways, I don't want to necessarily use this word, but in some ways to like create an expertise or around healing, or even to go through our own hardships in order to live in our life purpose. I think that our wounds in a lot of ways inform our life purpose. And so I just wanted to share some gratitude about this idea of transformation. So I wanted to share a bit about how it is that I got into this work, which, as mentioned earlier, I follow the youth. And so I also follow my own inner child and my own youthhood. And I just think that when I was younger, I had a lot of things that were working against me, that were created by society, created by the world, that were created by institutions, including my family, because family is an institution. Mm-hmm. I didn't mention this earlier. I mentioned that my mom's from North Carolina. My dad is from Nigeria. And so being in this multicultural household, there were so many negotiations that were happening culturally that created challenges, but also are the challenges that I embrace most in this world. I had 4 siblings growing up, and one thing, I was second to last, and one thing that I realized, I've been realizing more and more as an adult, is that in this dynamic, this very strong family dynamic, I felt silenced sometimes, not even necessarily by people telling me to be quiet, but just being younger and following the lead of very, very, very strong personalities. And just kind of in my reflections, witnessing how that story or that like fight for telling my own story or sharing my own perspectives extended into the world and extended into negotiating what my space was at school or on soccer teams that I played on, or in the bands that I played in. And so I would say that for me, the healing that has been really necessary in my life has been about feeling silenced in some situations, in a micro sense and also in a macro sense, and finding ways to collaborate with other people to not only uplift my voice, but to support people who are most impacted by the silencing effect, to be able to tell their stories in the most dynamic and beautiful and grounded in Indigenous practices way. And I have found that that doesn't necessarily have to happen in isolation. That doing the work is about like going within and finding those really beautiful entry points to connect outwardly. So that's my first wave of sharing around this idea of healing on a larger ecological level.
Holy crap. I felt that explored a lot and covered a lot in a very short time period. Thank you, Bevelyn. Jodie, what does this mean to you? And then pass it to Connie.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the personal healing and the planetary healing are two sides of the same coin, right? We are nature. So if we're doing healing work for ourselves on a personal level, it inevitably ripples out into our work in the world, our work in our movements, and vice versa. As we're doing healing justice work in our movement spaces, it inevitably sparks inward, healing and transformative processes like Bevelyn was describing. So I want to kind of, suggest the idea that we don't need to sort of step away from
our movement spaces or away from our workspaces in order for our personal healing journeys to begin. And I really feel strongly that because we are nature, because we are embedded in the web of life, because, you know, we are inherently interconnected, which in so many ways we've been seeing that, and that sort of the negative aspects of that through this pandemic. Like, we cannot escape being embedded in social and ecological relationships that are completely intertwined. So the healing journey is really a collective one, no matter what. And the question is, how do we consciously participate in that, right? So what am I doing? I like to think about myself as just one little cell in this vast body of the planet. And how can I be as healthy and happy in my cell so that I'm contributing to that whole body in a good way? So that means, I definitely have to take some responsibility for myself and the way that I show up and how I convey my healing into all that huge, vast body that I'm a part of. But how do I also recognize that I can never do it alone? It's never just an individual enterprise. And so that idea of sort of self-care gets a little tricky for me here, because I think that, yes, we do need to be able to engage in practices that we're taking care of ourselves. You know, we're putting on our own oxygen mask, as they tell us on that airplane. You know, you got to put on your own mask first, and recognizing that we are always in a community and a communal context, and are impacting others and are being impacted by others. And so I'm thinking about this song by a woman named Mother Turtle. We use this chant a lot in our gatherings when we sing and do call and response. And the first part of that chant is, the people of the world are gathering. Together we're creating a world unafraid of feeling. We're initiating healing. So we're initiating healing when we are willing to feel deeply what's happening in ourselves and in our broader movement, and then be in community to kind of digest those feelings and then bring those feelings into action, right? Take action together that's going to bring the results that we want to see in creating this livable future.
This is only the first 20 minutes of the podcast, and I still feel like I need to take a breath and write this down and digest this. Wow. Thank you. Especially, I love how you talked about bringing accountability into this space. I think a lot of folks assume that self-care is individual and it is, not selfish, but you're focusing on yourself. And in reality, it's a community effort. I know Mareshah was going off in the chat.
I'm agreeing with y'all. Y'all are dropping gems this morning. Like, I have nothing but gratitude to y'all. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Come on and jump in there. Come on.
All right. So if I were to describe what a wounded healer is, I would just have to say, as a wounded healer myself, how I am and bring in the lessons that I have learned on this journey of the personal and the political in the healing in terms of the micro and the macro. And for me, I have made the road by walking, by being able to know myself in such a way that as I am doing my healing work, whether that's in a therapeutic or a collective sense, the most important thing for me is to distinguish the difference between unlearning and overcoming. And so all my wounds are no longer traumatic. And I have overcome and learned all kinds of skills and tools and wit and charm and humor to move myself through those spaces where I might have been stuck and I might have been acting out in shadow ways. And so why I mention that is because it's also important to talk about myself as a wounded healer in terms of what I am not or what I am no longer. So I am no longer bitter. I am no longer in a sense of victimhood. I am no longer narcissistic or have rage. And for me, the constant fear and the state of alert, I'm able to put those at rest at different times when I create those spaces where I can enter into, not because it's safe, but because I'm brave. So whatever other wounded healers who are listening do in your body of work, I would say that is one of my learning curves in a therapeutic process was the sort of peace within, peace among, and peace without. And that was very important to me in terms of understanding what is good communication when I'm triggered, how to bring myself back to my right self by noticing the physical things around me. But more importantly, what I've learned is in order to do this work, I cannot always be focused on myself or the self. I have to also look at the other and the context. And that's called being congruent or in congruent conversations or, and then what is my comfort level, my compass of comfort. And am I always moving beyond the very small window of comfort to that space where you grow, which is in stretch. So wounded healers have to live in stretch. And we have to always be very clear, or I have to always be very clear that I am making this road while walking it. It's a lifelong work as an elder. And when I say elder, I'm talking Medicare, AARP card carrying, as in 66 years old. And I've been doing movement building work from some kind of justice lens since I was a teenager. And my first professional nonprofit industrial job was in 1990. And all that time I have been overcoming versus trying to unlearn behaviors that you fall back into, because it's very hard to unlearn a trigger, but you can certainly overcome a deep male voice yelling, and you know that it's not your father from your origin, your trauma origins. That is lifelong work. Thank you.
Connie, I love you so much, Connie.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, Bevelyn, go ahead.
I was just gonna highlight the word victim that Connie brought up, and I think that it's a really important concept to zoom in on. I remember when I was younger, I probably was like 17 or 18, and I was talking to a mentor and godmother of mine. And I was telling her about my life, all the things that were going on. It was so traumatic. There was so many things that I was trying to deal with. And that, the experiences that I was having were my experiences. And I was leaning on her to, offer me some guidance. And she said to me, after I probably talked for 20, I could talk now. I was probably talking for 25, 30, I don't know. I was sharing. And she said to me, Bevelyn, you are not a victim. And I looked at her, and I did not want to look at myself. I don't know if my jaw was on the floor, but it felt like it was, because I just felt like she should have held me, and maybe
she held a mirror up is what she did, and that's so uncomfortable.
She was working magic on me, and it took me years. I remember that I had that memory. I harbored it in my mind and my heart for many years with a lot of disdain and annoyance and kind of like, what the hell, and she has since passed, and the lesson that she left with me will continue on even through this podcast, which was, she gave me an opportunity, like you said, to put a mirror up and to realize that my victimization of myself in that moment, even when my complaints or whatever were valid to me, it put me in a position of entitlement and put me in a position of powerlessness that I think I think that I didn't see any options for myself outside of, what I was doing. And so I see that happening a lot in our movement, where there's a bit of confusion around victimization, which I think yields a lot of entitlement, versus centering our stories, centering ourselves, and collaborating with other people, but definitely going within to figure out ways that we can empower ourselves within this very toxic context. And I think that victimization process, it can be very isolating, and it not only isolates oneself when we are doing that to ourselves, but it also isolates other people. Nobody want to be around that energy, or we may draw in other folks that are doing the same, have on that same wavelength, and it can be very traumatic, not only to our personal healing, or I don't want to throw around the word traumatic, honestly, but it can be challenging to our own personal shift and ability to grow. But it also, I think, again, challenges our ability to build our movement. So I just wanted to name that I have a constant struggle with this idea of personal responsibility versus collective responsibility. And I just want to put that out there, just drop that, and then go on mute for a bit.
No, you don't have to go on mute, and anybody can jump in, but that directly leads to what one of my biggest questions was, as someone who also is a wounded healer. I mean, you don't go through this life without going through some type of shit, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're queer, especially if you're someone of color, especially if you're all the things. But the thing is, what is your advice? What are y'all's advice about dealing with your personal challenges, your personal traumas, your personal triggers, while also engaging in this work that, of course, is going to trigger you, because this is really triggering, like justice, like working on making the world a better place and working on making this world safer for people to live in is going to be hard. So how do you deal with those personal issues and triggers while also continuing to engage in this work? And anybody can jump in.
Yeah, Jodie.
You go.
Well, I have a lot to say about that, so I'll just say one thing and then pass it. But what I've noticed is that grounding is not just a pretty thing that we can do at the beginning of meetings with a check-in or in the beginning of a conference. It really does help to breathe, to take a beat, whether that beat is, a few seconds, a few moments, or, taking a longer break, and reconnecting with our natural environment. I have a challenge of being indoors. I grew up in the city, and I had a lot of narratives around, that outside is scary, and just putting my feet in the soil and talking to the trees and observing observing squirrels for me is a thing, where I'll go outside and I'll observe squirrels and I'll realize, oh my gosh, you are living your whole life out here, and y'all look like y'all having a good time. And so taking myself a bit out of my body and in my body, but out of my body into the natural environment, and just being present with myself has helped a lot.
Yes, Bevelyn. I am so glad that you were talking about that time outside, time in nature. That's really key for me. And even literally grounding, putting my bare feet on the earth, standing on the ground, just being outside for at least 10 minutes a day makes a huge difference. It really resets my nervous system. So the practice of literally grounding is huge for me. Getting a weekly hike in makes a big difference. A core practice for me is singing. Singing every day, singing by myself, even better, singing with community, literally raises my vibration. And I really believe that singing in our movement spaces is critical to our ability to resonate together, to entrain, to be able to be on the same vibe in our work together is really vital. And I think any of these practices, what we refer to in the Climate Justice Collective is inner resilience. Any of these practices that enable us to stay in our movement over the long haul are practices that are important for us to take on individually in our daily lives and collectively when we are in movement spaces together, because they're called practices for a reason. You have to practice them. They're not, they don't tend to be one-off things, right? If I do a really great job of meditating and eating healthy meals and doing my singing one day out of the month, that's probably not going to get me where I need to go in terms of my healing journey, right? It's so being willing and able to create the time and the intention to do the practices that work for you and work for your organization and work for your community in an ongoing way. And that connects, I think, to what we call revolutionary joy. So for us, the motivating factor in being in this movement is that we find our joy here. This is what brings us, this is what makes us really come alive. This is what sends us into a place of the most delight and connection, because we can be in community with people that are so deeply aligned, as Connie said earlier, head, hand, and heart. And so what are all of the things that we can experience joy by doing and being together? And those become those inner resilience practices that recenter us in what we're really trying to do. What we're really trying to accomplish is create a whole new way of being in the world. And we get to practice that together whenever we're leaning into what is revolutionary joy. The things that feel joyful in the moment, the things that bring more joy into our revolution, into our concept of revolution, and the things that are by their very definition revolutionary, because our system is designed to keep us from experiencing joy, because joy is inherently transformative and shape-shifting of this kind of deadening paradigm that we're living in.
And for me, it's real important to just name a couple of things around emotions. And for me, I have a range of them. I'm not always stuck in sad. I'm not always, stuck in any of the other ones. And Jodie beat me to the punch about really actively working to find the joy, to find the hope. And avoiding burnout is one of those things that is almost a daily practice based on what your regimens, your skill sets, your tools, the way that you move, through the world in terms of how personal you take things, or if everything, is about you. And so when I see myself getting triggered by something that has to do with my internalized oppression, I have a little thing I do. I don't have the time to go through it now, to bring myself back to my center in a way that, it is not all about me in certain situations when emotions or emotive opportunities, are happening. I rest. I have learned to say no. That is N-O and K-N-O-W. However, I need that to be, I know when I need to say no. And the other important thing about doing this work and taking care of myself is I've learned through the years not to participate in my own marginalization, because that increases, the sort of guilt and the martyrdom. So when I say I don't participate in my own marginalization, if I know that I am about to be tokenized or asked to come on a board or do an event because I, fit a specific demographic, and it's more optics, than it is substance, I don't participate in that. And I have a very righteous, gut radar, spidey sensey opportunity to know when I am being marginalized. And then if I should decide very strategically to participate in that, it's only to make a statement and to name the marginalization in a way that is nicety, as Janet Jackson would say, or using my HAL computer voice in a way that the stereotypes that I'm always having to navigate, the angry Black woman, being very careful how, when, and should I speak, being discerning. And so for me, I don't allow myself to get caught up in certain movement dramas that we take sides on. And I'm not gonna participate in cancel culture with the people in the movement, who I love and who are perfectly imperfect. And so not taking things personally and, not participating in my own marginalization, resting. And I'm not talking about nap ministry resting. I'm talking about resting in music and song and art and even, a good Netflix series occasionally as I work on that addiction.
Ooh, addictions. Speaking of going through, sometimes we go through in order to stop some things. And I feel that my art practice is a direct result of going through a lot of things in my personal life that encouraged addictive behaviors that had to come first because of my inner escapism. And before I got to that grounding point of realizing that I matter, and my impact matters, and I'm worthy of being treated in the ways that Connie described as a human being, but as an amazing human being that has purpose in this world. And so, and I think that sometimes it's not okay to make generalizations, but sometimes it really is. And I think that we all made choices to be here on Earth to live in our purpose, and we were all brought here, or we all came here to create something. And so centralizing that creative process has been the ways that I've been able to get out of addictive behaviors. And when I say addictive, it could be in terms of the way that addiction to my own marginalization, the things that I say yes to, the things that I say no to. And I've realized that in a lot of ways I have had an addiction to saying no to things that are actually really great for me because I'm scared, because of fear. And so what has helped me to ground in my own sense of KNOW, knowing, personal knowing, is creating an art practice that actually, in terms of the practice part, came later in my life, came more recently. And I went really, really deep within. And I think that my art practice became a process of channeling messages, and especially around our relationship to the natural environment. And so once I was able to get into a groove of understanding the mediums, the technical side of things, I just realized that I'm a beacon of communicating stories that I may have assumed were not mine because they're so great, but yeah, they're totally mine. And so my art practice then, after a while, I started showing my art to different friends and community members, and there was this healthy validation that came from being able to share on these different platforms, and they have created an opportunity for me to connect more deeply around climate justice and this like deep understanding of what it means to be a part of our home. And so I just wanted to share that my art practice has saved my life in so many ways. It has opened my mind to the things that I was really afraid of, and that I have, and given me courage to move forward one, stroke at a time, as if my paintbrush is my wand. And I encourage anyone who's listening to do some reflection on what are you creating? And it doesn't have to be that you decide on creating something and that's your career, or that you're creating something that's what you're creating for the rest of your life. But I think that every word that we say out loud is a form of creation, because it vibrates like into infinity, you know? So I just wanted to share my ongoing gratitude for artists out here who don't get paid enough and storytellers and cultural workers who don't get acknowledged for the tremendous impact that they have made on keeping us all sane and grounded in this connection that I think Jodie, Connie, and I are all talking about.
Wow. Like, y'all do it so perfectly. Y'all just transition us into the next question and the next question. And the things that y'all are dropping are gems. Like, what? Like, I'm going to take these and I'm going to use them throughout my life and keep them as tools. And speaking of tools, I want to ask, what are some tools that y'all use to combat burnout, to take care of yourself? We're all going through this movement every day. We all have traumas of our own, and we're moving through these movements, and we're trying to help others and even help others go through their trauma. But how do we take care of ourselves?
Well, I think Connie and Bevelyn have both spoken so beautifully to the importance of the clear yes and the clear no. Right. So a key way of combating burnout is knowing what your capacity is and being able to build your capacity through the kind of creative activities that Bevelyn was just describing, so that you can have a bigger yes and lean into that, and also have those boundaries around what you are not willing or able to take on. That no that Connie was describing. And so that's really key. And then there's some core practices that we've adopted that Connie has really helped us with as a gourd artist, creating these amazing rattles, these gourd rattles. And we will frequently in our meetings or just when we're hanging out, pick up those rattles, put on a really great piece of music, and just shake it off. We literally just shake those rattles. We shake until we feel better. And you know, we know that this action of literally shaking, moving your body, but shaking your body is an amazing way of resetting your nervous system and dealing with the stressors that we're under on a regular basis. And so something that could be really simple and just takes a couple of minutes can help us re-energize and be able to deal with whatever the thing is in the moment that might be pushing us over the edge. But, you know, I think burnout comes when we're not attending to ourselves, doing the kind of centering and grounding work that we've been talking about, doing the kind of deep reconnecting within ourselves with our own purpose and our deep yes. What is it that brings us to this work? How do we lift ourselves up in our daily practices around that? And then how do we reach out to each other and be in a mutual, a mutual revolutionary joy space around that as much as possible, and integrating that into what we're up to. Because burnout isn't something that just happens overnight. It kind of creeps up on us. And so I think being able to realize that we don't have to do the 10-day personal meditation retreat in order to be able to reset. We can reset day by day. And that really helps with the strain that comes, that can bring burnout on.
And I'll end by saying more historical than now, as again, my claim to being an elder, in the movement. But for me, recognizing the signs before it gets too late, if I'm always weary and fatigued and begrudgingly entering a space for a meeting. This predates virtual meetings, of course. Really checking in with what's going on with me, and then doing my capacity inventory of what am I, doing that is just in my head work, and what am I doing that is coming from my heart, and how am I working, with my hands. And if everything is leaning toward my head and I'm not doing those things that are about the heart and the hand, then I know that I am getting in trouble, and I course correct. And course correcting is extremely, important. And that's all a part of knowing yourself and knowing, when there is a trigger, when you should be ready to do flight or fight. And when is there a trigger that's a false alarm? And learning to not always be in a constant state of having to react, then for me, I do that discernment and balance out the head, the hand, and the heart. And that's always a go-to for me, even when I get weary, now at the age and the longevity with which I have been doing this work. It is never to the point to where I will quote a phrase from Alice Walker: activism is the rent I pay for living on the planet. So I'm always going to be true to the justice warrior in me, but I am also making very sure that I'm not a martyr and sacrificing myself to the cause that never ends.
And I would love to take this moment to do a shameless plug about why it is that I love NC Climate Justice Collective so much. And I love this hand, head, heart. I love the framework so much, and I just feel it's important to also name the gut, coming from the food systems perspective and food justice, and making sure that we are, our bodies are nourished. And part of that is spending time outside. And also part of that is being able to engage in some beautiful food. And sometimes that food is straight from the garden, organic, and, and super clean. And hopefully that is something that we can build a movement around, making sure everyone has access to. And also it is soul food, it's that food that we eat that is connected to our culture. And those two things aren't dichotomous either. They can be one and the same. But I just think it's really important to name that access to our nutritional selves is huge in this conversation. And it somehow feels very clear to me, but it is a very divisive conversation in movement spaces. So yeah, that gut. And the gut also is the first thing that forms. It forms before the heart, the head, and the hands. And so that kind of starting from the root piece is something I just wanted to name as well. But shameless plug about NC Climate Justice Collective. When I was doing youth organizing, wanted to connect around climate justice, we came to the NC Climate Justice Summit. And we went multiple years, but the reason why it was possible for 25 youth that we were able to organize to come to this summit is because NC Climate made a scholarship for every single person to participate. Each of these youth were coming from climate disaster areas, even though I don't want to frame it as like beautiful communities that were that have been traumatized by these major industries that don't care about the health of the communities. And so these youth being able to come to a conference, which is, we don't call it a conference, but this space where there are multiple people gathering for free was so impeccably important for their participation. And I'm naming that one because of what does it mean for an organization to be accountable to access to these types of spaces. And so access is one thing. I can use the word retention as another thing, but also do these youth even want to be there? Like, that is a huge question. And it's not only youth, but do the humans that are participating in this movement want to actually be in the spaces where we're looking to build and connect around our movement? I don't know if a lot of conveners are actually thinking about that enough. But when I walked into Climate Justice Summit for the first time, I was flabbergasted by the true diversity of people that were there. I looked at the numbers later. I wasn't allowed that first year because I wasn't on a leadership team. But it was like, in terms of race, class, gender, age, the numbers were almost 50-50 across the board, urban versus rural. And I had never seen a space that was so intentionally co-created. Not only that, but as you all may know, bringing youth from multiple regions of a given state or that are coming from different places is a lot of work. And that was my responsibility. But once we got there and got settled into the conference space, I was able to, as an adult ally, experience true rest and respite, because that first day was all about cultural work and getting to know one another and knowing who's in the room and making sure that there wasn't isolation between identities in this very kind of quote unquote toxic way. So I'm pretty sure that first year Climbing Poetry was performing, and that was also an investment. So I just think that I just wanted to really break down that first initial experience with NC Climate, because it is a lot of work to be able to create healing spaces on a community level. So thank you so much, Connie and Jodie, for being such powerful visionaries and putting that intentional work in from get to be able to make sure that we can rest, but also feel like we're a part of the community as we're building it.
Oh, Bev, love you so much. Thank you for being such a phenomenal co-creator and visionary with us in the Climate Justice Collective leadership team. It's just an amazing joy to be able to conspire together.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Bev, for that amazing shout out. And I am suspecting that perhaps our time is coming nigh.
It is. And the thing is, I could talk to y'all forever, but I know y'all are so busy. And so I kind of just want to close this really beautiful space, which, first of all, now that we're on the spirit of thanking, thank y'all for giving me soul food. I needed to hear all of this, and I'm sure everyone who's going to hear this will be needing to hear this as well. So thanks for feeding us.
Yes. Thank you.
And I want to close out with what are y'all's parting words? Any speak now, forever hold your peace? What you got? And I kind of just threw it back at y'all, but
I'll go last.
You'll go last, Bevelyn?
Jodie?
Sure. Well, my parting words are to love yourself, know yourself, and be brave, regardless of whether you have unlearned or overcome or somewhere, in that spectrum, in that trajectory. Just love yourself, and that negative little narrative, that little person, that little imp sitting on your shoulder whispering those negative things in your ear. Find out ways to silence the negative narrative.
I'll say to feel your feelings, to honor your feelings, and find spaces where you can be witnessed in and process through them so that you can find the power inside of whatever your feelings are pointing you toward. Definitely follow your gut in that, and know that there is revolutionary joy to be had every day. If you reach for it, you will find it.
Create. And knowing that creation is a very dynamic process, and it could be alone, it could be in community. And I think both are important. And be impeccable with your word is one of the 4 agreements. That really matters. Not only the stories that we share with other people, but the short stories that we share with ourselves. I sometimes get really nerdy about breaking down specific words. And I think that in movement space, it's really important to work on describing what it is that we mean when we say things. and practicing that listening and practicing the discernment that Ms. Connie has been talking about. So yes, create, listen, and yeah.
As a contractor, I choose Hardie fiber cement because I've seen it outperform wood-based siding and other hard siding materials. The high-quality craftsmanship translates into beautiful and durable results that leave our customers at G-Fidel extremely satisfied. Using Hardie siding has significantly reduced my callbacks and warranty claims too.
At James Hardie, we're here to support you, from training materials to resources that can help you generate a greater profit. Learn more about growing your business with us at jameshardie.com/build.
For 40 years, the Army Historical Foundation has protected the legacy of the United States Army. Now, they are asking for your help to continue their mission. Donate to the Army Historical Foundation today. You'll be directly supporting projects that ensure the nation always remembers the sacrifices of our soldiers. From restoring priceless artifacts and touring famed battlefields to building the National Museum of the United States Army, the Army Historical Foundation upholds America's sacred oath to never forget. Donate today at armyhistory.org.